All right, so today we're going to dive into market sentiment, also take a look at some of the indicators that are starting to push Bitcoin around a bit. We'll dive in deep. We'll give you guys some sentiment layouts, all sorts of new stuff to announce today, so make sure and stay tuned right here. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into TechPath. All right, before we get started, I want to thank our sponsor, and that is Tangem. If you go over to tangem.com, you guys can get into your own self-custody journey. One of the things they do that is a little different in hardware wallets is they use an NFC-style card. It's very easy to use. It's in tandem with the app, makes your phone pretty much a secure device to manage all of your self-custody crypto. They have a ton of tokens that you can use on it. And of course, if you guys want to check out more about it, you can buy a 2-card set, a 3-card set, all sorts of things. They do have a big update coming in October. This is their Twitter account. You're going to be able to monitor changes to prices of your assets over the past 24. That's going to be coming directly in the app. They also added a feature to help you make more informed decisions on a weekly basis, keeping tabs on your investments. Very easy. They've got all of this happening in October. Now, one thing to be aware of, in October, you're going to be able to get 2 different types of cards. You can pre-order them now, so when you go to visit our link down below, you've got one card that will self-generate a phrase, and then one card that you don't have to do anything with other than your biometric data and your app and the cards themselves. I would say don't cheap out, get the 3-card set because that's going to help you in case you lose one, all that kind of stuff. Use our code down below. Use PBN. That's going to give you some additional discounts. So hopefully you guys can do that and help the channel out. All right, so let's take a look at a few things today. I want to jump over to the FOMC scenario that's playing out right now. A lot of people look at the current market, some of the pressures that we're currently seeing. This article right here, FOMC versus Bitcoin price, hitting a local bottom, really is the question that I think a lot of people are asking. And that is, will Chair Powell, if he does go with no rate hike, in other words, we get a pause, will that have some indicators on Bitcoin and some pressures? Now, what we've seen is Bitcoin edging up above the 27K mark. And the scenario that plays out right now is whether or not we do get a pause, or if for some odd reason we get a little bit of a more of a push from the Fed. And I think the thing that we always look at, it's not necessarily the meeting that says, okay, there's no rate or there's going to be a 1/4 point, whatever that is. It's really the statements of Chair Powell after. When he does his press conference, that's when we really start to get into the mind of how this starts to affect the market going forward. And in many cases, we could be looking at a little bit of a sell-off right now prior to the Wednesday press conference. So love to get you guys' feedback. Drop some comments down below. Getting into other aspects around what's happening. Remember that Bitcoin formed a death cross last week. And even though it did, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin obviously is up 8% since that ominous sounding technical analysis had appeared. And I don't know, do you guys believe in the death cross, theme? Is it something as a trader or as a technical analysis person that you'd look at? Or are you looking more into the market sentiment indicators that show out? Because this is the thing that really has placed Bitcoin kind of in an interesting spot right now, jumping to 27.2, highest since August 31st, having climbed almost 8%. And then the other thing, no one's really expecting a change in the policy around what Powell is doing. So if we don't really get it, is this priced in? And I think that is the question right now. Are we at the price that Bitcoin is going to be at before we start to see some movement? Scotiabank basically did a dot plot, say it's likely to keep the door open for one more rate hike before the end of the year. So if that is the case, we could be looking at some market input around Bitcoin and Ethereum's price, especially if we get another 1/4 point hike, meaning there could be some opportunities for either some dollar cost averaging, getting into it as we start to see some market adjustment here. One thing I want you to consider is how sentiment plays into these markets. This was an article that was done here recently, sentiment update, too many bearish investors signaling a higher price. Now this is talking more about traditional markets, but the importance of sentiment has played a big role in markets in general, really for the last several decades. All right, so some of the things that we've looked at over the past couple of decades even is the idea of sentiment and even the VIX. If you look at the volatility, there was a few things that Buffett has actually played into, mainly looking at sentiment, that found that investor sentiment plays a significant role in market volatility, generating predictability, consistency with corrections, and also overreactions. And this is something that we notice a lot, even within our own market sentiment index, which is where we measure all of the top crypto projects. I'll show you guys some new stuff too today around what we're doing with market sentiment. And the other thing that plays into this is the volatility, which is the volatility index, the VIX. That's the other factor. So when you compare those two scenarios, those are two good indicators that can start to give you a little bit of a precursor to how markets are actually trending. And that's actually worked for the mood of Wall Street. Wall Street's mood right now, improving, but it's far from upbeat. So many people still looking at an upward trend. I'm a little bit more on the bearish side, mainly because of the sentiment data that we've continued to watch, not necessarily seeing a cliff fall off, but definitely not seeing the uptick that we have been looking for, especially with Bitcoin when it was back at say 32K. We were seeing a different kind of market scenario playing out in the crypto market. So there's a couple of things that are happening right now that I think will have some influence on how Bitcoin does. And is the 27K mark essentially the top of where it's going to be going before we start to see some market pushback before the end of the year? A couple of things here, big changes on our website. You guys are going to notice something, and that is the Crypto Power Index has been renamed to the Market Sentiment Index. And the reason for this is we have now expanded our tracking. So no longer is it just the crypto projects. We're also looking at some of the traditional finance markets. We'll be looking at gold, the S&P 500, and also doing some other things that will be beneficial to the crypto markets. One of the things that you're going to be able to do is get the top 10 cryptocurrencies now, including Bitcoin, Ethereum, obviously, but those are all 10 of those are going to be done on a daily basis. We used to just report Bitcoin and Ethereum on a daily basis. Now you're going to be getting all 10 of those. Those will slightly rotate over time. We'll look at those. They basically are put into the top 10 based on two factors. Factor one is the market cap, and factor two is the sentiment on the overall community. So that is a big scenario that plays into this. Web3 will still continue to be reported, but it will be mushed in with our altcoin analysis. So you'll have the top 10 daily, and then all the rest of the altcoins in Web3 will be on one index for you guys to track. So you guys will be able to check into all of that. Just to give you an example of what the dashboard is going to be looking like, you'll see some new buttons showing up here over the few days. If you're already a member, kudos to you guys. That's the value of being a member right now, is that you get all these great new updates. All right, so what you see here is our overall sentiment. Bitcoin taking a little bit of a slight trend up, also with Ethereum. One of the things that you're going to look at too that are added into the layer is you've got your altcoin sector right there. You've got your Web3, which these are things we've tracked for quite some time. DeFi is also brought in, but we've also added in our blue chip NFTs. And this is looking at the top 100 projects in the NFT market. We got some new exciting partnerships coming in on that, but you will be able to see NFTs on this chart right now. So if you scan down here, you'll see Bitcoin individually, along with Ethereum, and then we get into some of the other overalls, which is altcoins, less Bitcoin and Ethereum, Web3 projects that we qualify, DeFi, etc. All of that is available to you right now on the market sentiment indicator. The other scenario that I'm looking at right now, if you kind of compare this to where Bitcoin is, obviously we saw this big dump right here on Bitcoin, small amount, but up slightly when you look back where Bitcoin was coming from around the 11th of September, up almost 7.5%, even at its current trading point, which is 26.8. So maybe this is the slide off that some of the market is seeing moving into the FOMC meeting on Wednesday. And this is one thing that we've watched for quite some time, and it's done this cycle after cycle, is that the FOMC, typically it is, by the news. And that's kind of what we're dealing with right now, is if we do go with a flat scenario, the market could be priced in right here. Now, we will take a look at the S&P 500 as well to give you guys kind of an indicator here. But one of the things you should be considering is PayPal's crypto strategy continues to prop up Bitcoin's price. Now, many people have looked at this, and you've got one thing is the fact that PayPal is starting to integrate crypto payments into their business product and services. The other thing that I think will play into this is especially around PayPal's stablecoin. And I think their stablecoin activity, whether we get a lot of movement on it or we actually get some new services coming out of PayPal in the crypto category, I think will be a big factor. Another thing to watch for Bitcoin's price is, of course, the miners. And one of the news items on miners, HUD 8 and US Bitcoin now can merge. This is a Canadian court that basically was looking at this merger. They've allowed it to occur. And we're always watching the miners because these are some of the big factors on when we do go to the halvening, how does that affect Bitcoin's price? Because the miners obviously hold a lot of Bitcoin and we'll take advantage of that. In many cases, we'll look at some potential sell-offs there. So that's one thing to consider as we start to move into the halvening. Now, what can you look at on the short term that will give you some indicators on Bitcoin and in general, the crypto markets? One of the things that I'm looking at right now is oil pricing. The reason is because normally when oil is going up, the Dixie is going up. And with that the case, crypto is usually adjusting down, but it's not necessarily the scenario right now. This is the 1 month price. If you go back here, oil was down around 78 bucks a barrel back in Wednesday, around August 23rd. Here we are almost a month later, and now barrel approaching over the $90 rate. So we could see the $100 barrel of oil very significantly approach us in the fall. And that, of course, is going to continue to drive some of the energy pressure, not only on the dollar, but also on the EU and many of the countries that have a lot of implications as to how all this plays out in these macro pressures, which is what we talk about here on the show quite a bit. Another one here is Kobe EC letter talking a little bit, well, wait a minute, Paul, they added a whole bunch to the reserve. Just in, the U.S. added 600,000 barrels to the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Remember, this was pretty much drained. But even with that 600,000 barrels added, this is still setting at around 269 million barrels of oil away from being replenished. So this is still the lowest level since 1983. This is a problem for the Biden administration. It's going to be a problem for markets in general because it's going to continue to put pressure on oil prices. I mean, when you have this deficit, you're going to have to be buying. When you're buying, this is causing the price to go up. And that's the scenario that plays into this. The Dixie, if you look, and we'll go over the 1 month on the Dixie right here, you can kind of see the reaction on the Dixie in terms of the dollar index. This has been a pressure point that, for me, it still is surprising outside of the primary tech stocks that the S&P 500 has not reacted to some of these scenarios, because these are situations that really do cause problems within the scenario of consumer sentiment and also of just in general how consumers respond to the market, meaning they just spend less. All of those things do play into the market. All eyes on Bitcoin now turned, though, to what's happening in the Binance SEC case. This is a big deal. Now, we just dropped a video on the Binance situation and everything that's been happening with Binance after really over the last year. One of the things, though, to be aware of is the fact that we've started to see a lot more pressure coming in from the SEC. And you have to also think about what Binance's position is on Bitcoin, because they hold currently a record high of 692,000 Bitcoin. Now, that's what, when I say hold, meaning all wallets in on Binance. You look at that, and then you look at the pressures that the SEC is putting in terms of inspecting Binance.us. This is a problem. And remember, this is also the scenario where they were not releasing all of the information in the case. A lot of this was redacted. So this, again, still, which we'll find out on Friday what that was. And is it so bad that we're going to potentially see some real impacts to Bitcoin and other major market leaders just because of Binance? Remember how much FTX had in terms of an influence on Bitcoin along with other tokens. So a lot of other tokens out there that could be affected here overall. All right, so you guys are tuned in right here. Maybe you're here looking at Bitcoin sentiment. As I said, if you guys want to check out the new market sentiment index, just go over to our website. You'll be able to find all about it here. You can learn a little bit more about the product, what we've added in terms of key features, like the MSI dashboard. All of that's where you're going to get the top 10. The new TradFi sentiment, you'll be able to get S&P 500, gold, silver, and the ETF information that we'll be having there on both Bitcoin ETFs and Ethereum ETFs. So all that available. Just go over to Paul Barron Network. You'll find us there. If you're not in our Diamond Circle, make sure and get in now. It's very easy and super cheap. It's free. And all you have to do is click the link down below. You can sign up. And if you're not following me out there on Twitter, it's just @PaulBaron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.